What if the man you thought was untouchable turned out to have a dark, hidden side? Sean Diddy Combs, music mogul, icon, and king of the industry, is now facing shocking allegations that have rocked Hollywood to its core. Behind the glitz and glamour, a disturbing story is unfolding, exposing a world of abuse, power, and silence. Today, we dive deep into the 12th day of Diddy's explosive trial, a courtroom battle full of secrets, shocking testimonies, and a quest for justice that no one saw coming. Buckle up, because this story is far from over. Day 12 of the Sean Diddy Combs trial brought a bombshell testimony from Mia, a former assistant who's become the prosecution's key witness. She stepped up and revealed a side of Diddy no one wanted to talk about, a world filled with repeated sexual assaults and abuse. Mia's story isn't just an accusation. It's a detailed account of living under constant fear and control, painting a grim picture behind the fame and fortune. Mia described how Diddy's behavior wasn't a one-time slip, but a pattern of violence and manipulation. She shared moments when she felt trapped, physically, emotionally, and professionally forced to obey because saying no could mean losing everything. The power imbalance was massive. Diddy, with his enormous influence in the music industry, created a culture where employees felt they had no choice but to comply. Her testimony also revealed chilling details about the infamous freak-off parties, wild, secret gatherings that blurred all boundaries. Mia spoke about being pressured to attend and clean up after these chaotic events filled with drugs, alcohol, and questionable behavior. These parties weren't just about fun. They were breeding grounds for abuse and control. What stood out most was Mia's courage to break the silence after years of fear. Her voice gave the prosecution a real human story behind the legal jargon, exposing how abuse can hide behind fame and power. Meanwhile, the defense argued the relationships were consensual, setting the stage for a heated battle over truth and credibility. Mia's testimony cracked open the door to a darker side of Diddy's empire, challenging the glamorous public image and forcing everyone to reconsider what really happens behind closed doors. And this was just the start. The next sections would unravel more about the toxic environment and why so many stayed silent for so long. One of the most jaw-dropping parts of the trial has been the detailed description of the notorious freak-off parties, events that Mia said were hosted regularly by Diddy and his crew. These weren't your typical celebrity hangouts. They were wild, chaotic, and often unsafe environments where the line between work and exploitation disappeared entirely. Mia described the whole rooms used for these parties as filthy and dangerous. Broken glass, melted candles, and evidence of drug and alcohol abuse were just the tip of the iceberg. The atmosphere was tense, with attendees sometimes pushed into uncomfortable or exploitative situations. Mia explained how she was expected to clean up these messes afterward, a grim reminder of how those lower in the hierarchy were forced to deal with the fallout of the chaos. What made these parties even more disturbing was the culture of silence and fear that surrounded them. Employees and guests alike were often too scared to speak up about what really happened, knowing that Diddy's influence could ruin careers overnight. Mia said that everyone knew the rules: don't ask questions, don't resist, and above all, keep quiet. This toxic environment created the perfect storm for abuse to thrive unchecked. The freak-off parties weren't just about wild nights. They were a mechanism for control and intimidation. Mia's testimony painted a vivid picture of a party scene that was less about celebration and more about power dynamics, where those in charge wielded influence through fear and manipulation. The prosecution used these descriptions to highlight the pattern of abuse within Diddy's circle, arguing that these parties were a key part of how he maintained control over his employees and others. Meanwhile, the defense tried to downplay the severity, framing these events as typical industry gatherings. But the chilling details from Mia's account made one thing clear: there was a dangerous undercurrent beneath the surface of these parties, one that extended far beyond the music and fame. Mia's testimony didn't just reveal incidents, It exposed a deep-rooted culture of fear and control that defined Sean Diddy Combs' empire. She explained how the power imbalance wasn't just about money or fame. It was about absolute control over everyone who worked for or around him. According to Mia, employees were constantly walking on eggshells. The fear of losing their jobs, being blacklisted in the industry, or worse, made people comply with behaviors they found uncomfortable or even abusive. Mia described this as a calculated system where silence was enforced, not just expected. "You didn't say no," she said bluntly, because saying no meant losing everything. This toxic environment wasn't limited to private moments. It seeped into daily work life. Mia talked about how even simple tasks became opportunities for Diddy or his associates to exert control, whether through intimidation or inappropriate demands. This constant pressure created a workplace that felt more like a trap than a job. Mia also highlighted how rumors and gossip were weaponized, adding another layer of fear. Employees knew that one wrong word could be twisted or used against them, making it nearly impossible to come forward with complaints or concerns. The walls were literally closing in on those who wanted justice but feared retaliation. The prosecution leaned heavily on this testimony to argue that Diddy's power wasn't just about success, was a weapon used to silence victims and maintain a toxic status quo. Meanwhile, the defense painted a very different picture, claiming that interactions were consensual and that Mia's allegations were exaggerated. But Mia's vivid account gave the court and the public a glimpse into how fear and manipulation can thrive in high-profile environments. It wasn't just about one man's behavior. It was about a culture designed to protect the powerful and punish those who dared to speak out. As the trial continued, this toxic culture remained at the heart of the battle, showing why the truth was so hard to uncover and why courage like Mia's was so rare. With Mia's explosive testimony rattling the courtroom, the defense team wasted no time pushing back. Their strategy was clear: challenge Mia's credibility and paint her accusations as exaggerated or motivated by other reasons. This back and forth battle became a defining moment of Day 12, with both sides fighting fiercely over who the jury should believe. The defense attorneys questioned Mia on details of her testimony, highlighting inconsistencies and moments where her memory seemed fuzzy. They suggested that some of the incidents she described might have been misinterpreted or blown out of proportion. They also argued that any interactions between Mia and Diddy were consensual, framing the accusations as misunderstandings rather than assaults. One key point the defense raised was Mia's timing. Why did she wait years before coming forward? They insinuated that Mia's claims could be motivated by financial gain or revenge after leaving the job. This is a classic move in cases involving powerful figures. Cast doubt on the accuser's motives to weaken their story. Despite the aggressive cross-examination, Mia stood her ground, maintaining her account with emotional conviction. She acknowledged the difficulties in recalling every detail perfectly, but emphasized that at the core of her story, the abuse, the fear, the control remained true. Her resilience under pressure won quiet respect from some observers, even as the defense kept hammering away. This clash over credibility highlighted one of the biggest challenges in cases like this: how to prove what really happened when so much depends on personal testimony. It also underscored the broader issue of power dynamics, where victims often struggled to be heard against influential defendants. As Day 12 wrapped up, the courtroom was left with a raw tension, both sides digging in deeper, and the jury facing a difficult task: sorting fact from fiction in a case shrouded by secrecy and pain. Day 12 didn't just revolve around Mia. Several other witnesses took the stand, adding layers to the unfolding story. Their testimonies, while not as explosive, played a crucial role in backing up parts of Mia's account and shedding light on the atmosphere within Diddy's circle. One witness, a former event coordinator, described the intense pressure to stay silent about what happened at the infamous freak-off parties. They detailed the chaotic environment, how things often spiraled out of control, and how employees were expected to clean up and move on without complaint. This corroborated Mia's depiction of a toxic workplace where partying blurred dangerously. With abuse and exploitation, another employee spoke about the culture of fear and intimidation. They recounted moments when they witnessed inappropriate behavior or heard rumors, but felt powerless to intervene. These accounts painted a picture of an environment where even bystanders were trapped, unable to challenge the powerful or protect vulnerable colleagues. Yet, the defense team tried to discredit these witnesses, arguing that their observations were limited or based on hearsay. They emphasized that none of these individuals directly witnessed any assault by Diddy, trying to distance their testimonies from Mia's specific allegations. Despite this, the cumulative effect of multiple voices telling similar stories about the workplace culture strengthened the prosecution's argument. It showed that Mia's experiences weren't isolated incidents, but part of a wider pattern of control, fear, and misconduct. These testimonies helped the jury grasp the bigger picture: how power and influence can create a toxic environment where abuse goes unchecked. It also raised questions about accountability and whether those in charge deliberately fostered a culture that enabled harm. As the trial progressed, the additional witness accounts kept the pressure on Diddy's defense, reminding everyone that this wasn't just a he said, she said battle. It was about exposing systemic problems behind the glitz and glam. One of the most heart-wrenching parts of Day 12 was hearing about the lasting impact this toxic environment had on the victims. Mia and other witnesses described not just the immediate fear and trauma, but the deep ongoing struggle they faced, trying to rebuild their lives after years of silence. Mia spoke openly about the shame and guilt she carried for so long, feelings that many survivors know all too well. She explained how the abuse wasn't just physical or verbal, it seeped into her identity, making her doubt herself and question her worth. This emotional toll made it nearly impossible to speak out sooner. Other witnesses echoed this, describing how many people connected to Diddy's circle felt trapped in silence. They fear retaliation, public backlash, and the devastating impact coming forward could have on their careers and personal lives. The culture of fear that Mia described wasn't just about keeping secrets. It was about survival. Experts brought in by the prosecution explain how this kind of trauma can create long-term psychological effects, including anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress. They emphasize that victims often delay reporting abuse because they feel isolated, ashamed, and unsure if anyone will believe them. The defense tried to counter this by suggesting that the delays in coming forward weakened the claims. But the prosecution made a compelling case that the silence was exactly what Diddy's power dynamic intended: a way to keep victims in check and maintain control. This section of the trial was a sobering reminder that beyond the headlines and court drama, real people's lives were forever altered. It underscored why speaking out requires immense courage and why systemic change is necessary to protect vulnerable individuals in powerful industries. As the trial moved forward, the focus on victims' experiences deepened the conversation, not just about the accusations themselves, but about the broader issues of justice, healing, and accountability. As the trial rolled into Day 12, the defense team doubled down on their strategy to discredit the witnesses, especially Mia. Their goal was clear: sow seeds of doubt about her story and paint her as unreliable or motivated by other factors. Key tactic was to highlight inconsistencies in Mia's testimony. The defense pointed out moments where her memories didn't line up perfectly or where she couldn't recall specific details. They argued that these gaps weakened her credibility and suggested her story might be exaggerated or even fabricated. Defense also questioned Mia's motives, implying that she was after money or revenge. They suggested that her decision to come forward years later raised questions about timing and trustworthiness. This is a classic move in high-profile cases, aiming to shift focus from the allegations to the accuser's character. Moreover, the defense presented alternative narratives, claiming that interactions were consensual and that Mia misunderstood or misinterpreted situations. They tried to frame the freak-off parties as typical industry events, denying any systemic abuse or coercion. Despite the aggressive approach, Mia remained composed, standing firm on her core claims. Her emotional resilience under pressure added weight to her testimony, even as the defense aimed to chip away at it. This clash over credibility highlighted a central challenge in cases involving powerful figures. Victims often face intense scrutiny, and their stories are dissected to find flaws. The defense's approach made it clear that the battle wasn't just about facts. It was about narrative control and public perception. As the courtroom drama intensified, it became obvious that the jury's decision would hinge on who they found more believable, the accuser or the defense. This section exposed the harsh reality of legal battles where truth can become a complicated and contested territory. By the time day 12 of the trial hit, the media frenzy around the case was at an all-time high. News outlets, social media, and fans were glued to every detail, dissecting testimonies and speculating on what it all meant. This intense spotlight brought its own kind of pressure, not just for the courtroom, but for everyone involved. The defense and prosecution both knew the stakes went beyond legal arguments. Public perception was shaping the narrative in real time. For Mia and other witnesses, this meant their stories were being scrutinized not only by the jury, but by millions online. Every word, reaction, and slip was magnified, sometimes twisted. Social media became a battlefield. Supporters of Diddy flooded platforms defending him, often attacking accusers with harsh skepticism. Meanwhile, many rallied behind the victims, sharing messages of support and calling for justice. This split revealed how polarized the public was, reflecting larger cultural debates about power, abuse, and accountability. Journalists covering the trial faced challenges, balancing fair reporting with the sensational nature of the allegations. Some argued that media attention helped bring important issues to light, while others worried it risked turning the trial into a spectacle, distracting from the core facts. The defense team tried to leverage the media noise to their advantage, painting the accusations as part of a public relations attack aimed at damaging Diddy's reputation. The prosecution, on the other hand, leaned into the momentum, emphasizing the importance of transparency and holding powerful figures accountable. This media storm underscored how modern trials aren't just legal battles, they're public dramas, shaped by headlines, tweets, and viral moments. For the jury, it added another layer of complexity, having to sift through not just courtroom evidence, but the swirling noise outside. As the trial progressed, everyone involved had to navigate this double pressure cooker, the intense legal scrutiny inside the courtroom, and the relentless public gaze outside it. Day 12 was not just about emotional testimonies and witness accounts. It also saw intense legal maneuvering behind the scenes. Both the prosecution and defense used every tool at their disposal, filing motions and raising objections that could influence the trial's direction and tone. One major highlight was the defense's attempt to exclude certain pieces of evidence they claimed were prejudicial or irrelevant. They argued that some testimonies strayed from the core allegations and could unfairly bias the jury. These motions sparked heated debates about what should and shouldn't be allowed in court. On the flip side, the prosecution pushed hard to admit evidence that painted a broader picture of the workplace culture and power dynamics. Their goal was to show that the alleged abuse wasn't isolated, but part of a pattern enabled by those at the top. Objections flew fast and furious, with judges having to carefully balance fairness against the right to a full and open trial. Some rulings favored the prosecution, allowing key testimonies to stay, while others sided with the defense, limiting certain lines of questioning. These legal battles underscored the high stakes, not just for the facts themselves, but for the trial's overall narrative. Winning these procedural points could make or break how the jury perceived the case. Both sides also adjusted their strategies based on what had come out so far. The defense, facing mounting testimony against Diddy, shifted from outright denial to a more nuanced approach, suggesting misunderstandings and consent issues. The prosecution, meanwhile, doubled down on building a consistent story that connected all the pieces. This constant back and forth of legal tactics made Day 12 feel like a chess match, each side trying to anticipate the other's moves and set up for the final showdown. As Day 12 wrapped up, the trial was far from over, but the stakes couldn't be clearer. This case wasn't just about one man or one set of accusations. It was about shining a spotlight on a culture that many say has long thrived in silence. Jury now faces the tough job of sifting through complex testimonies, conflicting narratives, and legal wrangling to find the truth. Their decision will impact not only the lives of those involved, but potentially set a precedent for how similar cases are handled in the future. Meanwhile, the public remains fixated, with debates raging across social media and news outlets. Some see this trial as a chance to hold powerful figures accountable, while others warn about the dangers of trial by media and rushing to judgment. The case has also sparked broader conversations about workplace safety, consent, and the responsibilities of those empowered to protect employees. Activists and experts emphasize the need for systemic changes to prevent abuse before it happens, not just punish it afterward. For the victims, the road ahead is uncertain but hopeful. Coming forward was just the first step in a long journey toward healing and justice. The trial's outcome won't erase their pain, but it could offer some measure of recognition and closure. On the other side, Diddy's reputation and career hang in the balance, with every detail scrutinized. Regardless of the verdict, the case has already left a mark on his public image. Ultimately, Day 12 revealed how complex and challenging these trials can be, full of human emotion, legal complexity, and societal implications. It's a reminder that justice isn't just about evidence in a courtroom, but about changing the culture that allows harm to persist. As everyone waits for the next chapter, one thing's clear: this story is far from over, and its impact will be felt for years to come.